Fantastic. All right. Welcome to day two to the Mindset Challenge. Thank you again, Kirsten, for putting this all together. This is super fun. We learned a lot yesterday in the values exercise of how to get the values, not just for ourselves, but for our family, for our teams, and how bringing people together for alignment has helped both you and I to, for ourselves, for our families, and the directions that we're going, keeping everybody together and moving with a singular purpose. And I shared with my teams like what that meant for a team that was very underperforming and how we were able to relate those values to things that they were doing. And today we're going to be talking about the task assassin. This is something where, man, I can't tell you how many people have come up to me trying to get more out of their day. It usually comes up to that of how do I get more out of my day? How can I be more productive? The Task Assassin has long since been my tool. I honestly could not tell you where I learned it from. It's just one of those things. A number of different tools, and this is just the one that I just use daily. And I find the days that I use it, I get a lot done, and I get the right things done in the right order. And the days that I don't use it are the ones where kind of feel, floundering, like, what do I do now? Like, what was I working on? What was that thing? And constantly flipping back and forth. And we actually had a great conversation this morning in the Facebook group. So we'll dive into that too. But first, I wanted to talk about the Task Assassin, and let's talk about the homework and what we were doing. So Kirsten, did you have any insights from your day?
Oh my gosh. You know what? Every time I go through the Task Assassin, it reinforces for me what my priorities are. And you really hit home when you said, the right things done, get the right things done. There might be 100 things on your to-do list, but there might only be one or two right things that are actually going to push your business forward, develop your team, help you be competitive in the workplace, actually be innovative with your group or your company. And those are the things that as a leader, you want to be looking at. So for me, going back to that key concept, what is that one thing? What are those two things that I truly need to be successful at today and accomplish that are going to make the difference? And I really love the Task Assassin structure because there are all those other things that pop into your day. And I love having a separate column for them. So they're little perfect example. Tomorrow, I need to take gravy to my daughter's classroom because they're having Thanksgiving feast the following week. And that needs to be done. It's due tomorrow, but that's not a number one priority that's going to actually make or break my career or my business or anything like that. So having a separate list where I can actually have the busy work to do tasks that I've committed to go above and beyond with the different commitments I have, that is really nice to have separately. But knowing that I have my core actions that are going to actually push me forward as a leader, and having that so visible first thing in the morning makes a difference. So the right thing for me is what I love about this particular way of formatting it. And I've actually done a variation of Task Assassin for several years, but it wasn't until Justin and I started working together that I actually broke it down in that format. And to me, that makes a humongous difference.
Awesome. Yeah. And I tried probably every productivity tool out there I love my Android phone because it has widgets, and I hear the iPhone now has widgets finally too, but I tried the widgets and I tried web apps. And so it was a tab, but those things just get lost. I mean, we have 20, 30 tabs open, and if you're like me, that sometimes just happens throughout the day. And it's like trying to find the one that has what you're supposed to work on is rough. So I always have my Task Assassin right here at the bottom of my keyboard. So as I'm working, there it is. It's very easy to take that phone call, to be in a project and get sidetracked, and then go, man, what was I working on? And boom, it's just right there. And then back in the day, I mean, obviously, with everything going on right now, I don't get up from my chair very often to go out. But when I was in the office, I would get up from my desk to go to grab lunch. I'd take this and I'd put it in my pocket with my wallet, always with my wallet. So when I went to pay for lunch, this would be out. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. I need to do this, which is great because some of those blue like task items were an errand or a phone call. And that reminded me, oh yeah, I can do that on the way back to the office and just knock that out. The other piece is because it's paper, the back makes an excellent note card. There's so many times where something comes up and it's just like, oh yeah, I want that quote, you know, or reference, and I can go back there. And one day, actually, one of the early days that I was trying this, I had gone through everything and had turned over and added all new tasks. I was going through that, and I was just getting so much stuff done. And I remember kind of wanting to make one more stop. Like, okay, we're leaving Target. Like, I'm going to go to Lowe's and get this, and this for this other project. And my wife actually, it's like, I want to go home. And we looked down, it was 8:30 at night. I just realized like, oh, I was in such a, you know, accelerated time. Like, okay, now it's time to disconnect. It's totally okay that I got everything done on the front and everything on the back. Like, I can go home and relax now.
Poor Chelsea, I can totally relate to that.
Yeah. So the task assessment is fun. I think the thing that helps is that the breaking down of knowing what's the most important and just like really committing to whatever is there on top, whatever you identified, and then making sure those other projects keep going, because we all have multiple things that we have going on, and it's good to just make sure that all the wheels keep spinning. There's an old boss used to say, you know, the plates on the stick, you got to keep moving all of them and just make sure that you have a good rotation. And that also helps if the stakeholder asks you the current status on it, you know, because you've been keeping up to date on everything.
You know what else I particularly love about it? Especially when I'm working in person, I'm in and out of meetings constantly, depending on what the engagement is. And often something will come up in a meeting and I'll say, yes, I can do that. Or yes, let me get that back to you. And if I don't have a system to write that down, by the time I get to my desk, often I'll forget it. And those little things make a difference in following through with your integrity. Like, this whole week is about integrity. So how are you going to like show up in the action that you've committed to? And just having a system to write that down or make a note of it, so that way 3 hours later, after your third meeting in a row, you actually still remember that thing that you committed to that truly matters to someone else. So that's one of the things that I really love about the Task Assassin.
And that was actually a guy I used to work with. He's one of my favorite tools. He would go into a meeting with a Post-it note. So it was a smaller version of the Task Assassin, but he'd go in, and as we were all talking and he was taking down action items, when the Post-it note was full, he just got up and walked out. My plate is done. I'm good. Let me go work on these and I'll let you know.
That's great. I love it. So depending on your Post-it note, that indicates the capacity that you have for work. There's the mini Post-it notes that are like half size. So I'm the Post-it note queen, just to be clear. So those half-size Post-it notes, exactly. That's the ideal size to take into any meeting that you don't want action items.
Absolutely. It worked out great. We had one guy show up one day. He forgot his laptop. So he just kept calling meetings. And finally, we're just like, dude, we got to get something done today. And it was about 11 o'clock or noon. And he's like, yeah, I forgot my laptop. Killing us. So we'll have to do one on team meetings and how to make team meetings productive. But
fair enough. Yeah. We can have that challenge for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, the Task Assassin is great. The key thing here is, like we said yesterday, one of my core values at the beginning was efficiency. And I wanted to be as efficient as possible and just be get more done than anybody else. That was really what I was thinking about and what I considered a really effective executive, to borrow from Drucker. But as I was looking at efficiency was not what I needed to be focused on. It took something like really monumental to hit for me to realize that if I was being judged on efficiency, if I wasn't efficient because of external forces in my life, I didn't create a lot of value. So I had to switch and pivot to effective. And this was one of the tools that helped me not just be efficient, but effective, and be able to bring intention into how I set up my day and the things that I, committed to getting done in a certain time block. So Kirsten, how do you decide your big rocks for the day?
Geez. I feel like each day, I do a lot of planning up front, and I don't have the energy or the headspace to plan each morning, like straight from the get-go. So I do that up at the beginning of the week, and my big rocks just align with that. And so I don't actually have to think about it as much every single day, which to me, like streamlines my thought process. But
Mhm.
it makes it with I'm honestly a lot less structured than a lot of people that I know, with like kind of an entrepreneurial mindset, and I kind of hop from one thing throughout the day, which, being able to live with that energy and then also prioritize what I need to, doing my upfront planning makes the biggest difference for that. So yeah, that for me, it happens at the beginning of the week, or towards the end of the week. Sometimes I'll do it for the next week. What about you?
Yeah, that is awesome. That is definitely, I would say, the gold standard of, like, if you're able to do it on the weekend and just plan out that whole week, that's fantastic. I know for myself, I work in a couple industries that are super volatile, that things just shift and we have to leave a lot open for it. So we were talking about our Sunday ritual. So we have some cards that we go through, my wife and I, or actually the family and I, we bring the kids into it too, where we set our intention of, like, these are the 3 things we need to get done this week. So we do put that forward, and then on monthly we do the month, and we have these bigger rocks set up, and they're all on a board above the dining table, so we see it all the time. But I
Can we
need
stop for 1
to,
second? For
yeah,
anybody who's not familiar with what big rocks means, can you do a little side tangent and explain? Just occurred to me.
sure, yeah. So the big rocks, and you'll see it in the meeting training, but if you have a bowl or container and you put in the sand first, what you're going to find is the small things, those tasks, those minuscule things that they eat you up. The phone calls, the emails, the share the resource, watch this YouTube video. If you do those things first, you're going to find that it fills out that container really far, to the point where there's really not room for the projects, for the values that we talked about last week. And usually it's family that ends up getting sacrificed. But because we spent so much time on these little things, that we're trying to be as productive as possible, so we're knocking out all these little things. I'm just thinking of a duck and their feet underwater, just like spinning
A little
wildly.
hamster
But
spin.
yeah, but if we go into it with the intention, and we put the family first, our career goals and the projects that are really going to shape where we are in the next 5 years, we put those in first. When you pour in the tasks, there's usually room for all of the tasks still, but because we did the big things first, we made more room. And this really leads in, for me, to Jonathan's post in the group this morning, was because we were talking about, do we put everything into a backlog? Because part of the task assessment piece is capturing all those things that your head is trying to balance. I mean, this is great. It's great to be productive and laser focused, but there has to be, something that you're mining from to create this. And if we're doing it in our head, that means our mind is constantly looping through. And I'm speaking for myself, because when I was doing this, I was frantic. I had anxiety, and like a lot of things I didn't realize until now. And looking back, it's like, yeah, I was kind of a mess. And it manifested the most in not being able to sleep. Like, I had a lot of energy and I was always going. I was super type A. For those of you who are old enough, I was always called Alex P. Keaton as a kid, because that's just how I rolled. I was just always going, and I was destined to be that guy. But when I was doing that, my mind was constantly looping through and it'd be like flashing with a bunch of adrenaline, like, don't forget this, don't forget this, don't forget this. And it's impossible to sleep for me when that was happening. It was the David Allen's Getting Things Done book that he said, just write things, like write it down by your bed. And so, all right, well, zero effort. So I started doing that, and I found an app where I could just like unload it, get it off of my head into something. And I found it wasn't like that night, but it was like within 2-3 nights, my brain started noticing like, oh, it's down, like it's in a system. I don't have to worry about it anymore. So it wasn't constantly getting jolted by this adrenaline hit every few seconds, because your brain can only hold a few things at a time. By putting everything into a backlog, that the mental relief from me was fantastic, and it made a huge help. And there's some other things specific to programming that we can get into next. But Kirsten, what about you?
Well, I think Jonathan's question earlier was really valid. He said,
Mm-hmm.
What if you actually aren't remembering to do a task, was it even important in the first place? And what I really love about having that backlog and the written down process is that hopefully there are things that are unimportant and you can scratch them, because when you're in that cycle, that spinning cycle with your head where you can't stop thinking about something, often you get tied up on thinking about not forgetting it rather than the actual item and whether or not that's even value added to your life or your day or your priority list. And obviously that's what we're focusing on right now. Are you choosing to focus on the right things? And so when you do write it down and you create that backlog, it gives you the opportunity to be extremely intentional about whether or not you even follow through with that. That particular item might actually not have been worth it for you to be wasting your energy on, and also to even follow through with. So saying no is actually just as important as saying yes, and or even more so sometimes. It's actually even more important to say no, honestly. But being able to look at that item and say, you know what, this really isn't a priority. Good thing I didn't waste a whole lot of mental energy spending on that. And then you can move on to the thing that is actually much more critical. But the other thing that I really love about this process as a whole is it actually gives you the opportunity to take your brain power and apply it to something that is going to make a much bigger impact overall. So as a leader, being able to not be stressed about forgetting things, you're actually able to step back and say, okay, how do I support my team's growth this week? How do I create the vision for our organization moving forward? And that is all about what will make a difference with you being successful as a leader, with you being able to serve your team and make your clients happy ultimately. So in whatever capacity that is. And that's how your business grows. That's how your company grows. And that's how you level up in your careers. So I love that ability to like take the day-to-day mundane items off of your thought process and be able to use that brain power for something that's so much more worthwhile in the long term.
Yeah, and the context of time, I think, is a valuable part of that. That sometimes in the moment, there's things that I consider very important that are just like, man, I got to do that. I got to do that. But a week later, if it hasn't made it onto my, Task Assassin, or if it hasn't made it into my calendar, like, really, was it that important, or was it right now the right time, or should I move, like, reduce that? Should I push that back even further or delete it? So that's backlog curation, and absolutely a part of the process of just looking through it as you're going through. There's times when I have the same thing twice. Like I added on, like, oh, that was on there. So I just, move any context that I added in and put it in the other card. And by context, I mean, it's great to write down the note, but I do encourage you to flesh it out a little bit. Just, have something in there, because sometimes when you write a task, it might not appear, a week later, and all the things that you were thinking about pop in your head. So if you can add a little bit in there, not a lot of effort, just enough so that a reminder for yourself a month from now when you get around to it type thing.
Justin,
That would be
how
really
much
valuable.
time would you say you spend creating your Task Assassin daily or curating your backlog?
Uh, Minutes,
Yeah.
it's really fast. It's not a lot of time or effort. And the reason I do it is because it kind of, it's like sharpening your knife right before you start cutting tomatoes. You just do it really quick, and then you're on point the rest of the day.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's the key thing, is that just a minute or two makes a difference in you being successfully focused on the ideal things throughout the day that you've identified as the highest priority, or that you've identified as the key projects that you're moving forward
Mhm.
with. So it's not a lot of time, and it has tremendous return on investment.
Absolutely. So here's a good opportunity. I'd love to, Kirsten, you're great at time blocking. How do you use time blocking in your week?
Oh my gosh, I use time blocking for everything practically.
Mhm.
So time blocking, if you're not familiar, is literally just looking at your schedule and setting aside time for something specific. And so for me, I tie it back to my values a lot of the time, but I say, okay, I'm going to set aside, 20 minutes so that I can accomplish this or that or whatever. I find, especially when I have meetings throughout the day, and several back to back, if I time block up front early in the week, then I know that the key things that I want to focus on have time for them. Early in my career, I really struggled with like balancing meetings and actual work. And as a leader, like the work is setting aside time to think of how you're going to impact your team. Or, I mean, there might be some like physical tasks you're doing as well, but setting the vision is valid work. And if you don't have a space set aside for that, that's something that can really easily get pushed to the side. So for me,
Mhm.
like Sundays are my days to actually time block for creativity. They are times for me to time block for what my best week will be set up as, and envision what that could look like. And then I go ahead and actually set aside time during that week. On Sundays, often I'll set aside time later in the week for whatever I think is the priority that I need to accomplish. And for me, that time block might be, so my personal life, that time block might be from 10 p.m. until 2 in the morning. And I know that that time is not going to be interrupted. So I'm going to do my absolutely prime option, like my prime tasks that I want to accomplish during that time. I might time block something in the morning that's associated with spending time with my kids, because I know that that is a huge value for me, and it starts the day off really well. And I know I can get that time in like before school starts or on Saturday morning, something like that, and enjoy that. But I know that if I do time blocking, then I cover everything that is my priority, and I already know going into each day what the general structure is going to look like. So how about you, Justin? Do you do something a little bit differently with your time blocking process?
Yeah, I do a little bit of that too. I work in a calendar that I share with some teammates, so they're able to look at my open areas and book time on my calendar. So I find it's very useful for me to put a block for certain things that I know need to happen, so that I have the proper time for it. So, like for instance, Friday afternoon, I know is a time where there's that's a great time for people where everybody's kind of winding down. So they want to do like impromptu meetings that go till like 6, 7 o'clock at night on a Friday night. And it's not really the most ideal time with me, because that interferes with my family value. So one of the things that I do is I do a time block, and I do a lot of my setup on the demo site, do some software testing of different things. So I'm still very, very productive, but everybody sees that as a blocked time. And I have somebody who knows kind of like what I'm doing at that time. So if there is something, we can fit something in at that time, but we intentionally block that off. Even so far as blocking off lunches, so that I can, work out or do something, productive, go for a walk. I'm not as good at that as I need to be. Sometimes I take that time for other things, but it's great to have that time block there so that those meetings and those other things, as people are trying to book around me, can go to those right spots.
Yeah. I think if we pull it back to the Task Assassin, I mentioned that I have a time block often that's a larger block where I do a lot of work. I actually will set that aside, but then I'll break that down sometimes during the day and I'll say, you know what, if I have 10 until 2 at night to work, 10 until 11 is when I'm going to do my number one priority on my Task Assassin list. So that way, one, I know I'm hitting it first. I know I have the energy and I'm not exhausted at that point. I have a slightly different schedule than a lot of people, I'm sure, obviously. But having that literally defined for me, it takes the thought out of it. So I know as soon as I sit down, I'm going to get focused and I'm going to focus on the number one priority that I have. And that is going to make a huge stride in whatever my commitments for the day are. And I've prioritized that myself. So that's my second level of time blocking, I would say.
Excellent. Yeah. And it's really good to, if you do have your primary or even a secondary that is going to take some time, and you want to make sure that you can have that contiguous block of time to really get into it without interruption. A time block is a really great way at the beginning of the day to find where is that going to happen, and you lock that in. It kind of takes the weight off of it too, of early in the morning, if you can't get to it first thing and it's going to show up at 1 to 2 in the afternoon and you have that blocked off, it kind of takes the mental weight off of I have to do this thing and then not getting to it and I keep getting called and pulled away. You got that time, you got it set up. So for your mental self.
Well, and you've cleared the options so that you don't get pulled away, really, because somebody else has to actually, like you were saying with your team members, someone else has to actually actively pursue you in order to interrupt that time, as opposed to just scheduling something there.
Absolutely. All right. So Kirsten, what can we expect for tomorrow?
All kinds of fun. What are we doing tomorrow? Shine! It's my favorite day.
Shine.
We're shining tomorrow. You're going to have to wait tomorrow to find out what that's all about. But we will be here for you first thing tomorrow morning. Check in 9 a.m. East Coast time. We're going to be posting the video. And then throughout the day, please share any, this is a great sharing activity. So I can't wait to see what everybody posts. And then we're going to celebrate tomorrow night through our 3-day challenge. And I'm super excited about this. Yes, totally. I'm super excited because these are only 3 components of an entire roadmap that we have put together for you. So we're going to actually talk through how this fits into a whole path to help develop leadership. So I look forward to that. Come join us tomorrow and we will see you then. Thank you, Justin.
All right. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.